Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. We have new information tonight on the extraordinary level of involvement of one of the key players in the administration's reaction to the Benghazi attacks of September 11th, 2012. Meanwhile, the parsing of words over the assault that claimed 4 American lives has reached new levels here in Washington. President Obama still clings in part to his initial statement, downplaying the level of organization by the attackers. This was the president with Bill O'Reilly yesterday.
And when you look at the videotape of this whole thing unfolding, this is not some systematic, well-organized process. You see...
It was heavy weapons used, and that's heavy weapons coming in.
Bill, listen, I've gone through this, and we have had multiple hearings on it. What happens is you have an attack like this taking place, and you have a mix of folks who are just troublemakers. You have folks who have an ideological agenda.
All right.
You have some who are affiliated with terrorist organizations. You have some that are not. But the main thing that all of us have to take away from this is our diplomats are serving in some very dangerous places.
This is the finding of the Democratic-chaired Senate Intelligence Committee. Quote, the collective assessment of the IC, the intelligence community, remains that the attacks were deliberate and organized, but that their lethality and efficacy did not necessarily indicate extensive planning. Tonight, Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge looks at how a top CIA official shaped the post-attack narrative.
The bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee report sheds new light on the role of Mike Morell, the CIA's former deputy director, in the Benghazi talking points controversy.
I think given what was said by him and others and where they're headed down the political road would justify revisiting this issue.
The Senate report states that on September 15th, one day before Susan Rice's controversial Sunday show appearances, where she blamed a demonstration gone awry, Morell and others at the CIA received a critical email that reported the attacks were, quote, not an escalation of protests. It was from the CIA chief of station, who was on the ground in Libya.
The chief of station is the senior intelligence officer for the entire United States government. You would really have to have some incredibly overwhelming factual evidence to disregard that. 5 former intelligence officials contacted by Fox News agreed with Faddis's assessment of the chief of station's email, but declined to speak on camera, citing personal reasons. The way the agency works, he's been running 24 hours a day to nail every fact. And now he's reaching out 4 days into this email directly to the most senior levels of his organization, saying, again, with the big red crayon as clearly as he can, there were no protests.
While the report does not explain when Morell read the email, it says that on the same day, September 15th, he edited the talking points twice, excising about half the text, including prior warnings to the State Department. The word Islamic was cut, but demonstrations stayed in. The next day, September 16th, the same day Susan Rice was on TV, Morell then asked CIA staff at Embassy Tripoli for more information. On September 18th, the CIA and FBI reviewed the closed-circuit television video from the mission facility that showed there were no protests.
Where there is an offensive video.
Days later, the president was still blaming the video.
Why didn't somebody correct the president within the system who knew better? This is why you need a joint select committee.
The bipartisan Senate report found that intelligence analysts hung with the protest explanation, quote, without sufficient intelligence or eyewitness statements to corroborate that assertion. The intelligence community took too long to correct these erroneous reports. In November 2012, at the height of the talking points controversy, Susan Rice met with Republican Senators McCain, Ayotte, and Graham. Morell accompanied Rice.
He tried to defend her appearance on television and tried to defend the idea that there was confusion about what happened in Benghazi.
On who changed the talking points, Graham says Morell blamed others.
What I found curious is that he did not accept responsibility for changing the talking points. He told me the FBI had done this. I called the FBI. They went ballistic. Within 24 hours, his statement was changed, where he admitted the CIA had done it.
As he prepared to leave the CIA, Morell gave an interview to the Wall Street Journal, which reported his interest, quote, in advising future presidential campaigns. And the Journal said he is close to Hillary Clinton, citing unnamed officials.
He's put himself out there now as a political player.
Fitton's group Judicial Watch is suing in federal court for talking points documents and recently received these heavily redacted emails.
You have to wonder what he was thinking at the time. He was deleting these talking points in a way that benefited the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton personally.
Senator Richard Burr is one of 6 Republicans on the Senate committee who signed this addendum, highlighting their unanswered questions. Republicans and Democrats disagreed on whether the talking points were altered for political advantage.
Well, I think Mike Morell's had a distinguished public career, but many of the comments that he's made about especially the last decade at the agency, are inconsistent with most of what he said while he was a CIA representative and coming before the committee.
Now a private citizen, in an interview with 60 Minutes, Morell seemed to distance himself from his years at the CIA under President Bush and from the CIA's waterboarding of 9/11 suspect Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
What's my view? My view was that those coercive techniques were the wrong thing to do. My view was that those techniques were inconsistent with American values. And for that reason, I don't think they should have been done.
In addition to joining Beacon Global Strategies, a firm founded by Philippe Reines, who was recently described by the New York Times Magazine as, quote, Clinton's principal gatekeeper, Morell is now a paid TV commentator on national security for CBS News, and he's got a book deal.
Morell declined Fox's offer to speak on camera about the Senate report and his decisions before, during, and after this controversial episode. We asked Morell to address the September 15th email and whether it was the first time he was told there were no protests. In a written statement, he insisted the Senate report strongly supports the CIA's position that the talking points were not politicized in any way, Brett.
We'll continue to follow it. Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.